record and then screen share. All right, well, I'm going to jump on in, and like I said, we'll go through this really quickly, and if there is something that you want to interrupt and kind of jump in the moment, feel free. If not, we'll run through the ideas and then talk right there at the end. So I always like to recap some of the things that we heard. I felt like we got phenomenal input on last Monday. We heard a lot of really, really great things. I think the overarching ideas of a community that is pivoting from a strictly agricultural base into a community that is understanding how to wrap their arms around ecotourism and outdoor recreation and catalyze on the visitors that are already being brought to the area, which is extremely important. Dan shared with us over 12,000 visitors a year coming out to White Rock, a newly refined booking engine that is allowing even greater exposure to those overnight stays. We talked a little bit about those dynamics of the difference between travelers that are traveling from the west to White Rock versus the ones coming from the east, and making sure that we are positioning Coon Rapids as the base camp, the hometown of that outdoor recreation experience, which I think was something everybody was in favor of. Couple other just big nods, tremendous amount of pride as it related to the local school. Tremendous amount of credit owed to you all with the astuteness of the development corporation and the wisdom in investing in housing. That is a absolutely phenomenal move that I have to tell you, I've been doing this almost 20 years and don't think I've ever seen a local economic development entity decide to put the focus that Coon Rapids has on investing in housing. So major kudos to that. All in all, the meetings were overwhelmingly positive, but I felt like they were also grounded and realistic. I didn't feel like people were just, blowing smoke. It was a truly positive and energetic conversation. So from that, I always like to look at the things that already existed. Katie was kind enough to share this kind of contact sheet of some of the icons that were generated. And I want to be very, very honest. Although I'm going to be making recommendations today on adapting and kind of evolving from some of these systems, this is a very good system. That you guys did a great job with the development of it. I feel like it probably has done a good job at connecting the dots. The one thing that it did, and I think that you have, if it's fair to say, you have matured past some of these kind of marketing tools. It did a really good job at connecting dots. It did a really good job at showing how everything needs to be part of a system, but it always relied on very literal elements. And when you rely on a literal element like that, you end up having your entire community represented by an ear of corn. And I say that kind of playful, but I think that we can all acknowledge and understand that Coon Rapids is a remarkably dynamic place, and we need to be able to have a symbol that can come to represent all of our storylines instead of a picture that is going to try to capture them all at one time, if that makes sense. So I think you've laid a great foundation, and we're just kind of moving to the next step. Does that make sense to everybody? Just nod if okay, cool. So then again, kind of tying into this, one of the things that was interesting was I was able to kind of watch a slight evolution from the contact sheet to maybe a little bit sharper, more rigid version of the corn. In this, what you all did is you selected a typeface as a consistent element. You selected a word lockup so that it was always the same, and then you selected that counterlevered square as your consistent graphic tie-in. We're going to use a lot of the same techniques, but we're going to do it in a way that I think is a little bit more expandable for you all. So the framework you're trying to push yourself into is not so rigid. Again, you know, obviously our primary organizational focus is on Main Street Coon Rapids. But again, with this, you can kind of see with the rigid constraints of the pre-existing system, it sometimes makes it hard for you to figure out how do you grow and how do you expand. So we have to include the ear of corn because we're Coon Rapids, but now we're also Main Street. So we want a building on there, but we don't just want a building. We want people being active. So let's have a shopper in there. And then let's make sure to have an open sign so that we let people know that we've got businesses that are actually open. You know, all of those are the components of complexity because you weren't able to more simply represent yourselves. So again, this is not bad at all. It's just probably a little more complicated than you need it to be. So what I wanted to do is I like to go through and kind of focus in on a series of brand elements, our colors, our typeface selection, our approach to graphics, and our overall message. And those are those 4 components to help to create this storyline. So the first thing that I wanted to do is I wanted to look at your colors. And well, actually, I've got a quick summary of some of the values. These are things that I feel like I heard over and over again that I love about Coon Rapids and that we wanted to keep in the system. You're a traditional community, you're energetic, you're natural, you've got this gateway to the outdoors, you are tied to the land, you are stubborn in a good way. You know, that kind of, that stubbornness is actually something that is very, very endearing. It is what allowed you to keep those attributes that you have. And then you also are remarkably proud. Now, from a color palette system, one of the things that we have found, and I think I'm not going to shock any of you when I say this, when you land on a color palette and your only main colors are green and yellow, it is difficult for that to not throw you into a John Deere type category, which is fine. But when you take a John Deere preconceived notion and then put an ear of corn in it, like, it becomes a very dictatorial system. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to preserve that green and yellow of your system, but I wanted to expand it out. I wanted to give you some more colors that allow you to have this rich, nature-based palette. So I picked a really dark, rich blue. I ended up incorporating a light blue as an accent that you'll see as well. I picked 2 kind of warm earth tones, and then I expanded our green palette out to 3 different greens, a light, a medium, and a dark. And one of the things that I did notice was people acknowledged that you were using green and yellow, but then it ended up kind of being a different green and yellow every time. So it was like, okay, well, we're close enough. I think that this palette will allow us to use these colors to connect those dots. And then one of the other things that kind of came out, and I heard a couple phrases. Somebody said diamond in the rough, and somebody said, you know, this kind of hidden gem, this community that you might not know about until you discover for yourself. And I really started to like this very simple kind of diamond icon. I felt like it was symbolic in a lot of different ways. You know, you're a community that has withstood a tremendous amount of pressure. You are a community that is truly shaped by nature. You are a rare and beautiful experience, and you are adored by your citizens. So that simple diamond gesture actually led me to select a primary typeface that featured that kind of diamond element as the top of your lowercase I. It's a very simple gesture, not over the top at all. But I picked this serif typeface. It's a traditional base, but it's nice and thick. It's got some weight to it. Your name looks very, very good in it. And then to go alongside that, I actually picked a hand-lettered script as your accent. Now, these scripts are difficult to read. In looking at photos of Coon Rapids, I did see that there are several different versions of the word Coon Rapids on signs throughout the community. There are a couple that do have more of a script typeface on them. Scripts are difficult to read. It's okay to use them when you understand that they're not the most legible. And you don't necessarily want to use them as your primary representation of who you are. Now, what that looks like in your name itself is this is what we call your word type. And I actually went through and I did custom spacing on the letters so that the dead center of your name would fall in the center of the R. I wanted to make sure that your name ended up being perfectly balanced, which is difficult when you have, 4 letters in one word and 6 letters in the other. But with the way that that spacing fell out, and once I kind of changed around a little, we ended up with this word type that had this great spacing. And I see you looking behind you, Jess. In the old one, because of the spacing of the letters, you ended up having this kind of funny, it's like, do you orient it to the space between the words, or do you orient it centered, and you kind of fall in this kind of funny place? But because of the width of these letters, we were able to get it to land right in the middle of that R. So then from that, what that leads us to do is write a brand statement. And I tell you what, I have to move my little screen where everybody's faces are so that I can actually read the words. So I'm going to read this for you. For over 150 years, people have been drawn to this amazing place we call home. Through our heart flows a river whose waters powered our first mill, fueled our family farms, and inspired our very name. In Coon Rapids, we have always been stewards to our rich lands. We have become known globally for growing things. We work hard, raise families like a village, and crusade for strong schools to grow our own. And for a community with an agricultural history that we have, we are proud to be the hometown to the great outdoors. We invite you to escape, feel at home, and explore historic Coon Rapids, connected naturally. So what that does is that pulls you together into this very, very simple circular icon. This icon actually is representative of a lot of different things to me. There were so many very simple things that I saw that I found to be inspiring for the community. I absolutely love the thoughtfulness that went into your public art of the silo art and the integration of genetics into that. And again, all of those silos are always round. Things like the term of WHITEROCK being the darkest skies in Iowa, and being able to look up and see the skies that surround us. Being a community that is this place that we have always grown things out of nature. So you have this kind of interesting green at the bottom, blue at the top with the energy within. But it is simple and it is iconic. It is not a picture of any one thing. It is more of a way that we can kind of capture the energy of the place. And I want to talk a little bit about how that brand system works. When you have this simple icon, you start to see that you want to make sure that it works in different formats. So it simplifies down into one color, and those work well. You can stack your logo and put that coon on top of Rapids and have your tagline below. And you can even, after time, integrate in that circular icon to replace letters and simply have this kind of local way of referencing yourself as Coon, which we talked about last Monday as being something that you do. And then as you start to use it, you can start to earn the ability to have that symbol represent you all on its own. Now, this is a very abstract image. And at first, it's one of those things where I always have to tell communities, when you go this route, You have to earn the meaning behind it. You can't just launch it and expect that it will stick. But one of the things that I do think is as you start to see the implementation, you'll start to see that with each additional use, the simplicity of the icon grows in meaning. So from there, I want to hold the community identity for a second and talk a little bit about Main Street. Now, when you look at the mission of Main Street Coon Rapids, you've got this, it's a great statement that really talks about who you are and what you do, but it's also very internal. This is a statement that helps our board make sure that we are on task. One of the things that I always try to get our Main Streets to do is ask themselves, why? Why do we do this? Why are we doing it? And, to me, Main Street makes it all feel at home. You are that warm hug. You are the connection between people and place. You are the entity that makes people fall in love with Coon Rapids. And in a relatively traditional Main Street approach, you can then take that icon, pair it with this kind of image of this kind of historical streetscape, which I did a lot of Google searches. I was having trouble finding imagery of your actual light posts that exist now, but I know that there are plans for streetscaping, and I'm pretty sure I wrote down the idea of the integration of vintage poles. And knowing that 90% of all the vintage poles that go in nowadays are what they call acorn style like this, then I felt like this was a relatively safe direction for us to walk down. But again, being able to create this identity of Main Street as being this warm and energetic light in the community, gathering people around and kind of setting that tone, being able to have those four main colors that represent that 4-point approach, it gives you that opportunity to start to expand the system and build more meaning into it. Now, where it really starts to grow legs is when you start to look at taking things like the typeface and connecting it over into different entities and identities in the community. Now, I wanted to be very, very mindful here where I understand that your school system is not just Coon Rapids. We had a great conversation last week about how sometimes it gets shortened to just Coon Rapids and people feel bad for Baird because it's like they're left out. So literally in this, all I did was I integrated the primary typeface, but I also gave a kind of fresh look at this idea of both a district-oriented logo, but then also your athletic logo. So you've got something that is a little bit more oriented to sports where it needs to be sports, and a little bit more traditional when you're talking about the district itself. I don't know if you guys know anybody who's on the school board, but just figured I'd throw that out, right? I know, hint, Katie. Simple things like the fire department. This is, first of all, a great building. And I simply took their pre-existing logo that I had found online, switched out those center letters for the letters in their typeface. This is the kind of change where I'm always hesitant to do too much with fire departments because they carry axes around. But this is a simple gesture that simply shows how people can connect in with virtually no commitment on their part. It's just a nice way to kind of connect those dots. Now, the other thing that I did was make sure that the red of the fire department matched the red of the school district. So again, creating those simple, continuous connections between those entities. I wanted to spend a little bit of time with Coon Rapids Development Corporation. This is, I've already talked about the dynamic approach that I feel like the organization has. Here, I wanted to create this stylized version that obviously is an homage to corn. I think one of our biggest concerns in Coon Rapids is that when you have a rotating ear of corn, I think that citizens are scared that you're either corn or not corn. And I think it's very, very important as you start to adopt new tools that you show that as you move forward, that doesn't mean that you have to put all corn imagery away to move forward. It just means that you grow and adapt and have a lot of different pathways. I think one of the things I really like about this particular icon as well is if you notice how those leaves overlap in the middle, they also kind of form a heart. And it's this kind of very simple gesture of, you know, a development corporation that is truly investing in the heart of their community and understands that to capture the economic impact, you got to give people a place to live. Now from here, some other simple gestures, again, leaning on the typeface, leaning on some of those graphic elements, being able to wrap the aquatic center in. I have to be honest, I was jealous when I looked at this. I live in a community of 15,000. We have absolutely no public pool facility at all. And to see this aquatic facility that you all have makes me jealous and ready to come visit Coon Rapids, especially as the temperatures continue to rise. From this, even things like the golf course. And you can see here, very, very simple, subtle gesture of taking that icon, placing it out, grayed out in the background, almost representative of the dimples of a golf ball. So you start to build more meaning because of the simplicity of the system that you have. Now, the other thing that, you know, I mentioned it with the development corporation, but I want to make sure that as we go through this, people don't feel like all corn imagery is being replaced. But you do want to be able to lean on imagery that is more clean and contemporary and fits alongside the system. So I did a stylized version of a corn stalk that kind of feels like it goes with everything else, if that makes sense. Now, this is kind of fun too. You can start to see where you go through and you build in variations in the simplicity of the icon. So you can turn it into a jack-o'-lantern. You can go through for 4th of July. You can make it red, white, and blue. Because of the simplicity of the design, it allows you that opportunity to go through and expand it and make it mean more. And then, you know, even doing a variation with dark skies, and I was trying to connect some of the dots. You know, I had found an article about how amazing it was to look at stars from White Rock. I had seen the mention of dark skies in the contact sheet of logos. So I'm not sure whether I connected everything that was there, but this marketability of being able to take advantage of the nature that surrounds you and kind of get away and being able to kind of own that from a Coon Rapids standpoint, I think is really important. Now, I overstepped, Dan, and just went ahead and even threw an idea out with White Rock. Obviously, I know that White Rock was part of the previous branding system. There's no reason that White Rock needs to adapt as Coon Rapids adapts, but I felt like it only made sense since I was deep into it to kind of throw this out as well. So again, using the same color palette, leaning on the typeface for connectivity, introducing this simple phrase of nature at its best. I feel like one of the things that, and I might be overstating, but based off what I've heard in the years since the brand system was done, White Rock has continued to grow in popularity. And you know, it really has become somewhat synonymous with outdoors, with the Des Moines Metro, and being able to have this kind of confident brand mark that goes along that, even if it is simply adopted for almost like a merchandising line, so that you don't have to worry about investing in signage or things like that. But I always like to throw that out with the big amenities that are bringing people in. Now, one other thing, just from an idea standpoint, I mean, you can't work with the name Coon Rapids as much without realizing that Coon Rapids is known for corn, and Coon and corn are only one letter away. Um, I think that there might be an event in there somewhere. I'm not sure exactly what it is. I don't know whether it's the Iowa Corn on the Cob Festival. I don't know whether it is figuring out a way to, you know, cook only corn. It has to have food involved, but you know, the big thing is, and I hope that it's coming out loud and clear, the community can grow and the community can adapt and the community can even shift economic focus without leaving corn behind. It can absolutely and should be part of your story, and it doesn't have to only be a story in the past. But I have to be honest, your story is far more compelling than constantly reading about how Khrushchev came and saw your corn in the 50s. Like that's a very valuable part of the storyline, but the life and the activity and the story of the people moving back, the young families that are coming back to this small Iowa town to raise their kids, that's the storyline that we want to shine that spotlight on. The fact that you are a escape to people from hours around you where they come and get away and relax and connect with nature. Those are the storylines that are driving your economy. And then just a couple other things to kind of round it out, and then I'd love to hear your thoughts on everything. You all had done an amazing job on the wayfinding study. I spent a little bit of time with it. I felt like you did a great job with sign locations, with being able to figure out where to put those, what right-of-ways they were in. I wanted to show you kind of a comprehensive wayfinding system with the branding applied to it, and just know that I think that your destination identification and your location, sign location identification is good. The only thing that caused me concern at all, and every state's a little different, so if IDOT is good with it, a lot of states don't allow for a wayfinding sign to be applied below the stop sign. If Iowa has allowed that contingency, then that's great, because that sets up all kinds of appropriate places to apply those signs. But oftentimes wayfinding needs to be placed as a precursor to the stop. So just kind of file that away. But I wanted to quick show just a graphic update. This particular sign, when you go through and you Google Coon Rapids, Iowa, and you look at the images that come up through Google, overwhelmingly your responses are this sign. This sign to me perfectly captures where the overuse of green in a world that is all green around it causes the sign to go away. It's the impact is lost. You've got so many different greens, the green of the grass, the green of the corn, and then all the graphics are green on the sign. So it is absolutely okay to incorporate these other colors in your landscape, because the thing that you know that Coon Rapids is bringing to the table is green. So from the gateway, you can look at these signs. Now, what I actually did was I took some inspiration off of the silo caps on the art, and tried to incorporate that a bit into that sign design. This does not have to be overdone or overthought. This can be a graphic treatment on a sign blank. It doesn't have to be a die cut piece. And Katie, I'm more than happy to kind of work with y'all directly, because I feel like you've done so much legwork on the plan, and all you really need to do is land on the design itself. What we see here is, if we start from right to left, we see a typical monument style gateway. Oftentimes we mark arrival at our city limits, but then there's a little bit of a corridor entry sequence before we get to the heart of the community. And it's okay to re-announce arrival, and oftentimes those can be done with a slightly nicer, slightly smaller gateway sign. And then to the left of that gateway is what we call a trailblazer sign. Now you see two sizes of those. Those are all going to be scaled based off of the speed limit on your sign. The larger has to have a minimum of 6-inch letters, while the smaller has to have a minimum of 4-inch letters. So these are big signs by IDOT standards. And then from there to the left of that smaller trailblazer sign, we actually see what we call a pole mounted gateway. So announcing arrival once you actually get to the core, the heart and soul of the community. It's funny. It's almost like we don't tell people where they are enough. We don't acknowledge you've now reached the heart of the community. And you can do kind of these downtown gateway signs that are simply pole mounted signs. And then from there, we also show an example of a banner design. I think that this, I've got some more banners in a second we'll talk about, but I think one of the other things that you all can do is you can think about leaning on what we call guerrilla wayfinding as well. These are more temporary oriented. They can even be printed on plastic instead of metal. They can literally go up in 2 weeks, and you can just have these to kind of help drive additional connectivity. Whether you're one of the things I would say is the guerrilla wayfinding would be a really great tool for you all to use to try to capture the folks who are biking the trail from White Rock into downtown. And then you specifically use these signs to try to maximize the impact of those folks on bikes. Super low cost, super easy to implement. They literally get zip tied onto pre-existing poles. So it's really, really easy to roll out. Then even signage like available property signs, being able to help connect Main Street in with making sure that as somebody who might be thinking about opening a business, they get connected with the Main Street organization and know that they're there. And then these are a couple different banners that I put together. We saw the full color on the wayfinding sign. One of the interesting things that I always like to do is I like to use simplified banners on perpendicular connectors to our main street, so that it helps people to realize that there's more to see, but then it also helps them to kind of organize and orient off of that primary main street so that they can understand the role of those nodes. And then one of the other things that I really wanted to do was I wanted to create a White Rock banner to be featured in downtown. Think again, this idea of truly promoting yourself as the hometown of the great outdoors, the hometown of nature, the hometown of that outdoor escape. It's almost like if you had a university, you would want to have banners in your downtown saying that this university's here. We want to treat White Rock the same way. And then finally, I always like to apply it to merchandise. Being able to see the brand on products, oftentimes in communities. The stuff that we have access to is not necessarily the best designed. I know that we did mention last week that Hardware Hank does sell some stuff. You all named a couple of different businesses that you can get products from, and that's great. But one of the big things that I wanted to kind of convey to you all is in positioning yourself as an outdoor recreation center, you want to have product that is connected with that industry. And you want to play off of the idea of what we call brand co-oping. Oftentimes when somebody creates a product like this, they almost start with the idea that there is no marketability. So the first thing that they do is try to find the lowest cost product to apply the logo onto. Where if I was working out at White Rock, and I needed to do something for, say, my staff or for, some major donors, I want to spend the money and get some Patagonia vests with the WHITEROCK logo, because I want the value of the Patagonia brand in the outdoor world to convert over into perceived value of my product. And you want to think the same thing with your community. So I will never forget the first time one of my kids asked me for a hydro flask, and it was like they were asking for a new car. And I was like, it's a water bottle. What's the point? Oh, it's a $700 water bottle. I got you. I understand. So being able to have that brand premium associated with your community's identity, it builds your own value. And you don't have to do a ton of them, but a little bit of that presence goes a long way. In addition to that, as you know me, every time we've had a Zoom call, I always wear a hat. So I like to design some simple, clean hats that folks might wear. And then just, additional merchandise. One of the things that's really nice about this is because of the clean, simple approach, there are a lot of different things that you can do. So that's what I was able to put together. I've got a giant list of events that I just didn't design yet because I wanted to get a first reaction from you all. But I've got Main Street Block Party, Christmas in a Small Town, Easter Egg Hunt, Shoot the Loop, Scavenger Hunt, Movies on Main, Treats on the Street. And then I've got some additional organizational collateral materials for Main Street that I want to help on as well. But I really would love to take an opportunity to just hear from you all, hear your gut reaction. Does the strategy make sense? Does the look and feel as you start to see the system come together? I know at first it's always jarring because it's kind of like, that's my community and I've never seen it that way before. And that's why I always like to show a lot of different elements so you can start to get comfortable with it. But I'd love to hear what your thoughts are based off what you've seen.
Got to go to another meeting here, but let me just jump in. And I've been through this process before, and with a big organization. I know it seems like, it is jarring sometimes, and it's hard to get to the right point. But first of all, just like on this sweatshirt, one thing that I comment on is like a lot of people think we're Minnesota, and there's a lot of stories about that. So just Coon Rapids, you may think about Iowa in there some way. Gotcha. To differentiate from Coon Rapids, Minnesota, and so that can be a little bit of a thing. That's on your little bug, if you can bring up your little round logo. Yep. What struck me, and you didn't mention this, but the first and second rings there look like a cross section of an ear of corn. And if you could bump down the points on the outer points on that, it would look like when you cut ear of corn in half, and so you get the corn feeling a little bit more from that, but not obviously. Exactly. And that really kind of struck me to see that and what you've done there. The color scheme that you're talking about, you've gone from John Deere to camo, which is not bad. I see a lot of hunting from this as well, just by the camo palette that you've chosen. Gotcha. And then the one thing you finally expressed, what I've been saying in these meetings and Main Street meetings and stuff like that, the signs where you enter Coon Rapids by the icons there are this green color. And I'd say you can't see those signs unless you're really looking for them. And I'd say, what do? We make them neon or do something like that. And when you said the overuse of green causes a sign to go away, and our entry point signs at that turn section there, right below the dollar store, is exactly what you said. They just go away. You've got to see, they're like camo on the brown wall and green sign, and it doesn't say Coon Rapids Business District this way. So I appreciate you articulating that in a better way than I've been trying to say it in the past. So great. Then the other thing I've always said too is that revolving ear of corn sits off to the side. It doesn't point toward Main Street at all. You have to be really intentional to get out of your car and go up to it and have people take their pictures with it. And so, we've got to, it's going to stay there, but you got to mitigate that with that other turnoff there and getting that to under town. And you mentioned that with wayfinding and stuff like that. But otherwise, I got to run. But I really appreciate this, and I think it looks great to me. And awesome. We've got board issues to deal with when we show them the stuff that you've done for WHITEROCK, which we talked about doing. But if Coon Rapids changes, and shows this work as something they're doing in Main Street, WHITEROCK can change and adopt the, you know, the font types and the color schemes and things like that as well. And
Awesome.
our little bug, I don't like it. It's just 2 colors. I like what you've done with it. It jazzes it up a little bit more, and so it looks good. It looks good
Awesome.
to me.
Awesome. Hey, thank you so much. Thanks a lot. Great comments.
Yeah, but thanks for your hard work on this.
Thank you.
I like the logo. I think it makes us look more relevant, more up with the times. I'm trying to interpret how our community will feel about it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, with change. I liked the different taglines.
And let me tell you this, Katie, this is the way that you phrase that is perfect, because, you know, you probably can pick a handful of people that, you know, off the bat, if they saw it, they would be like, sweet, clean, contemporary. It almost feels like it's moving. That, like, you could pick up a group of people that you know will love it, and you could probably also pick an equal size that'll be like, I hate that. That's horrible. Where's my corn? You're just turning your back on agriculture. And, you know, the thing is, it's like, as you start to feel the system out, I don't feel like we jumped too far off a ledge in terms of it being too clean or too sterile. It's definitely it's a shift from the literal to the conceptual, which can always be hard sometimes for a community. The last thing in the world I was going to say when I described the icon was that it looked like a cross section of a piece of corn. But when I showed it to my wife, she was like, are those like corn kernels? And I was like, if you see corn kernels, yes, but I'm not going to say that out loud. So I love that Dan said that. That's what's beautiful about an icon, is it can be simple, it can be abstract, and a lot of people can see a lot of different things in it. And so I'm glad that you're kind of thinking through that. And I look forward to the conversations that you all will have internally as to, you know, is it too far? Are there some things that maybe we need to do? Another thing that I really kind of felt like it had this interesting, it fell in this really interesting place where it feels clean and abstract, but it almost feels connected to like quilts and to like a traditional, almost a folk inspired art, like a not pretentious, like it doesn't look like a museum logo. It's this kind of weird place that it's fallen into that I really liked. But again, you know, I'd love to hear as it starts to sink in what y'all's thoughts are on it.
You know, we've spent some time with the Destination Development Association. And we've listened to Roger Brooks, and you know, one thing he preaches is about unique. What is unique? What's your identifying feature? Does your logo say Coon Rapids is unique because of this, or does it look like any other community? And so I'm wondering if that natural, that makes us unique. Does that set us apart?
So I've been doing this for a long time, and I don't ever like to disagree with other professionals, but Roger Brooks and I have fundamentally different approaches there. I feel like when you put a community of 1,800 people or 2,500 people or 4,000 people up to this task of, you have to go and you have to find the one thing that nobody else has, and then that's what you got to sell. What you've done is you've created a task to invent something with an assumption that that's why people travel. People don't always travel to find something they've never seen before. In fact, the thing that they want to do is connect to places. It's about finding those messages that bring them into a comfort level so that they can explore and discover on their own. And granted, in the larger messaging, you want to be able to talk about your competitive advantages. You want to be able to talk about the things that make you different and the experiences that nobody else might have. But Roger puts this spotlight on forcing it into the identity in a way that forces you as a community to kind of leave a lot of the other stuff behind. And that's where you get that's where your citizens start to reject the message because it feels like it's too catered to the visitor. And the thing that I like about this is it is a message that we know what people are being brought to the area for already. And we're trying to capture them into our community, and they're coming for White Rock. But then we also know the values that the local has. And this idea, I mean, naturally is such a simple phrase because it is expandable to the hilt. Like, you can talk about a great place for dinner, naturally, a great place to buy a hammer, naturally. Like, it is so simple, and that allows you to be expandable. So I always say, find that way that you can make somebody feel at home so they achieve the comfort to explore on their own. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have to fight. I'm literally in the process right now of writing an article about how uniqueness is not the litmus test. It's a weird dynamic where you all, I can tell you this, the community is keenly aware of what your assets are, and they're keenly aware of the things that you need to say to bring people in. But that doesn't mean that your tagline should be hometown of White Rock. You know what I mean? Like, that's, you know, what's bringing people here from a visitor standpoint. I mean, you were keenly aware and mentioned over and over again, wire to the home. And wire to the home is probably driving marketability of young families relocating here because they have the ability to telework. They have the ability to create a life right here and still be able to be connected and not even have to have any trade-offs at being connected. So it's this beautiful idea of being connected while also being disconnected. So that doesn't mean, Katie, that doesn't mean that phrase is not, there are a lot of different ways to unpack it. So I'm interested to hear what you all come back on that with. But the big thing that I just want to tell you is I don't think that you need to sit there and ask yourself, is this something nobody else can say? When you look at every major brand out there, their statements do not have that thing that nobody else can say. They earn the ability for nobody else to say it through their own implementation. You know, Reebok could have said, just do it. They didn't. You know, Nike said it and made it mean something. So I think that being able to have something that is simple enough that it turns your resonance into a chorus is the goal you're really shooting for. You want that thing that's like, yeah, I like that. I like the simpleness of it. Any other thoughts? Jess, you haven't said anything.
No, I haven't. I love it. I love how you've incorporated it in, you know, throughout your presentation. It was awesome. At first I was a little shocked, but then I'm like, ooh, I could see where this could be. I mean, we're naturally awesome. So
right.
Just the way we are.
Well, and I think that's, again, that kind of flexibility to be kind of fun and just comfortable with it, you know, like it really is because of the identification that you both have this agrarian history and this outdoor recreation future. You can essentially apply naturally to virtually anything and give it a double meaning. And that kind of simple cleverness is really, really valuable as you're trying to get the public sector and private sector to work in concert to tell Coon Rapids' story. Natasha, were you able to see anything?
I do. I just don't have my camera on because I've been running around with my kids while I'm listening. But I think it all looks really great, and I really like the color scheme and how the colors blend so well together. And I mean, I kind of agree with just everything Jess said. So I think it looks great.
Awesome. Katie, do you have any questions?
Not for you at this point.
Okay.
So this is a great start. I really like a lot. I like and agree with most of with everything you said. I think our group needs to think about this and discuss it, and get back to you and let you know what our thoughts are. If we were to say, yes, we love this concept, we love this vision, what would be the next step for you? Would you create more marketing plans for us, more concepts? What would be?
So here's typically what we'll do is I will share this presentation with you as a PDF. I'd like for you to reconvene the group kind of after they've had time to soak it in. Think about where you fall on it. Are there refinements that you'd like to see? Let's say that there's, let's say that you hate a color and they're like, hey, can we figure out how to add this color? Can we figure out how to adapt this? Or, hey, we've got this issue with the icon. Could you offer some refinements that better do X? Then, kind of give me those marching orders and I will be able to quickly turn around and respond to those refinements. And then the second thing that I would like for you to do is, after seeing what I've created so far, send me a list of refinements and then send me a deliverables list of the extra stuff that you want to make sure to see added into the system. And then depending on how long it takes those to come back from you all, I would love to think that it would only take, let's say that after y'all really soaked it in, let's say that we were 90% there and you had a couple refinements and tweaks, and I was able to get that back to you in a couple days, and then y'all looked at it and you're like, okay, we're ready to green light this. We're comfortable with where this is going, and we're also comfortable that if there's any other little tweaks that we need to do, we can just do those and run with them. Then I will prepare the full style guide package for you all. Everything that you see, I'm going to give you. I'm going to save all the different logos in 5 different file formats and all different color breakdowns, and create a style guide document that you can share with the community. And that should be probably, within a week of me getting refinements from you all in that green light, we'll be able to turn the product right back around to you.
And so some of those deliverables, would that include, how we unveil this to the community, how we roll it out? We need to take this to the city council and have them review it too. And then let's say everybody says, yes, we like this, are there press releases that you'll provide for us so that we can explain this to our community?
So here's what we typically do. We have created a couple of tools that I think are helpful in rolling it out. Every community is different, so there's not the idea of kind of a regimented step-by-step rollout is so dependent on the dynamics of the community, the budget available, and that kind of thing, that it's difficult for it to be step 1, step 2, step 3. But what we've done is we've created a comprehensive brand implementation checklist that brings everything down to one page, so you can think about all the different components that you might be working on and what makes the most sense to do. I do have them broken down into phases, 3 phases, based off the things that make the most sense to get out of the way first. Now, there are some things that are in phase 3 that they're there because of cost. One is wayfinding signage, but because of how much you've done, you might have a funding mechanism ready to go there, so it slides into phase 1. But I mean, you all know that makes sense to you all. The second thing that I've done is I've created what's called a how to be a brand partner page. It is intended to share with the community so that they can see how they can take advantage of these tools, whether we're talking about event organizers, local businesses, or other organizations. And it kind of explains how they can take these tools and use them creatively. There's also a brand score sheet that allows you to score your own implementation and identify low-hanging fruit. And then there will also be a brand summary page that is a 1-page description of the color selected and why, the typeface selected and why, what the icon means, and that kind of stuff. And though I think between all those tools, folks typically feel like they've got a lot of meat to start sharing it with the community. Oh, I lost your voice.
Kristen, any thoughts?
So I would say my only thoughts are, I love it. I absolutely love it. I love that it's refreshing. I love that it's not gimmicky. I love that it incorporates in all aspects of our community. The Pantone colors, like, you know, in working with Katie and on the Main Street board, there's a lot of things that I've done to put advertisements together that it's tough when you get to John Deere green. And it's something that we were doing Foodie Friday wise. And I'm like, ooh, well, I'll just go red and black because that ties in the school.
Right.
So I love the versatility. I love being able, I love that it's abstract. I love that I can put whatever meeting, if it's the 4th of July fireworks, or if it's, you know, something that we're doing for a block party. It's phenomenal.
Oh,
So, and I also love and I don't know if you meant to do this or not, but the homage to the original branding, which is the diamond behind each facet of our community that invites people to interact, which is the diamond, that you've incorporated that into the type font in Coon Rapids so that you're not forgetting that. Because I think that that's one of the things that even myself that I have difficulty with is I don't want to forget the past. You know, there was a reason why we moved here. There was a reason why my grandparents moved here. There was a reason why I moved here. But I really like the idea that it identifies future opportunities, and I think that we can make it work well with everything. You know, it's just not one thing that it's like, ooh, that brand just doesn't really work for what we want to do here in the future. It's got lots of opportunities, and I think that that's the best part about it. And I love the tagline naturally. I really do. My biggest fear is that when I went through that survey and trying to come up with, you asked us to come up with a tagline for Coon Rapids, and I was like, and I can get pretty wordy, as you can tell, but I just love it that it is one word, you know, and it encompasses everything, you know. So sorry, but that's
awesome.
just you know, my takeaway. So I think you've done an excellent job. Do I think it'll be a hard sell? Everything I think in Coon Rapids is a hard sell sometimes, but you know, after a while and people start seeing it, then you say, yeah, that's good. You know,
And one of the, well, first of all, thank you for the comments. Couple quick responses there. In the style guide document, we will define all the colors by Pantones. We'll also give you the CMYK and the web breakdown. So color consistency should be super easy. I've purchased the typefaces for you, so I'll give you all the fonts and make sure that you have access to those so that consistency is there. You know, the idea of that connection back to the previous diamond and that consistent element, that was this kind of under the radar thing that I kept picking up on, and I felt like it was such a strong element and I mean, on the report card for Did You Do It the Right Way, you guys did a great job. It was a well-designed system that captured individuality while also having that continuity. And I wanted to keep that as part of the system while also not having the layout be quite as confining anymore to, I mean, it's got a certain period look to it, and I wanted to kind of free that up. So I appreciate all those comments. I think that I'm excited that you are feeling the same energy and emotions that I was trying to put into it, because I was remarkably impressed with the people that I met and talked with. And I wanted a logo that when you looked at it, nobody thought you were podunk. Nobody thought you were out in the middle of nowhere with like it's just sophisticated enough to be relevant without being exclusionary. And there's that remarkable sweet spot that we were trying to land in, where we could have the logo build everybody up a little bit without making anybody feel like they weren't part of it.
I love it.
Awesome.
I guess the next step then is our local group here will get together and we'll talk through this and get back to you any refinements and a list of deliverables, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, so Katie, what I will do is later on today, as soon as the video has uploaded, I'll send you a link to the video file. I would love it if the folks that weren't able to join the call would listen to the video, just so they can hear the explanation. But then I'm also going to share the PDF of the show with you all so that you can dig back into it and look slide by slide. And then just keep me in the loop in terms of when you all get together and talk through, you know, mark up that deliverable list that you'd like to see and any refinements that you have. There are a lot of little things in there that, you know, one perfect example is, as I look at it, I kept asking myself the question, what is the right amount of spacing between the elements of the icon and the white space? So it might be that one of the things that you come back with is, hey, is there a way that you can make the icon a little tighter? Is there a way that we can get a little bit more meat and a little bit less air in it? And, you know, it's those little things like that that it's good to get more sets of eyes on before we start tweaking and digging into it. But, you know, just treat it like a buffet. Let me know what you like, what you don't like, what you love, what you'd like me to explore. And we will just keep this train moving. Hey, Michael, do you have anything you want to throw in?
He jumped off. He said he had an 11 o'clock. Yep.
Oh, okay. Yep. Cool. Well, y'all, thank you so much. Y'all have been, these are always nerve-wracking presentations, but they're even more nerve-wracking via Zoom because, you know, you get to be in your office or in your house and you know, you don't, I always wonder, do you pick up on how much I really love the community? And, I mean, as much as I do this, I have to be honest, I am really disappointed that I didn't get to come there in person. I mean, I have thoroughly enjoyed meeting you guys. I feel like this is just a really amazing place, and we've got a trip to Iowa planned later on in the year. Hopefully, if that does happen, I'd love to see if I could stop by and see you guys and meet you.
We'd love to have you here.
I think it's during training later on, Katie. Is there, I don't remember where it's planned.
The fall conference?
Yeah.
Is it in Fort Dodge maybe this year? Which is about an hour from here.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, that'd be awesome. That'd be awesome. So maybe we can just plan on a tag along there where I can come see everybody and love to take it in myself. So, and then while I do that, I'll do some photography and share that with you all then.
Oh,
'Cause
wonderful.
I
Okay.
always like to make sure that I'm adding photos to the mix as well. So, well, y'all, thank you so much. Katie, look for an email from me with the video link and a PDF of the show. And I look forward to hearing back comments from everybody.
All right.
Awesome.
Thanks for everybody who could
Thank
be here this morning.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.